Give me that goofy smile. Hey, welcome to the Nova Hoopcast. It's a winter wonderland here in Northern Virginia. We don't know. We forgot what snow looked like, I think. We haven't had any for the last couple of years. And one of the thoughts that comes to my mind, again, disclaimer, COVID obviously very serious for everybody worldwide. However, for a basketball coach, you're dealing with COVID. Now you throw some snow into the mix and you're trying to make up games. That's got to be a mess. But anyway, Kevin Weirin and I don't have to worry a whole lot about that anymore.
Oh, we don't worry about that anymore.
So we're joined now by Kevin Roller, head coach at Madison High School. Hey, Coach Roller, before we start asking you questions, let's see that right there. That's Madison Coaches Award, 19 something.
There we go.
So yeah, I actually did wear the short shorts at Madison High School. My accomplishments on the court are probably not recognized the way they should be. I don't have a plaque in that Hall of Fame yet. I'm sure it's coming, sometime soon. But Kevin Weirin knows how it is. Like when you get the Coaches Award, it usually means you.
That's right. All coaches are the Coaches Award winners. No MVPs. We're just
right. Played hard, had a good attitude.
Yeah, he loved the game.
So anyway, so thanks to Kevin Roller for rolling out of bed on this snowy morning and joining us for a few minutes.
Hey, Kevin, thanks for coming on. Appreciate it. You said we're a little bit early, but this is kind of when we do things to hide from our families and get this done very quick. For those people out there who don't know about your background, you and I go way back. We coached together at Marshall. I had the good fortune of seeing you work as a JV coach for my program for many years, and you've gone on to do amazing things, not only at Madison High School, but at McLean High School as well. Let's talk about the present. Let's talk about your current team. Tell us a little bit for the people out there, who you got on your team this year and what it's been like to coach them.
As Brian said, crazy year with COVID. I'll jump back a little bit, Brian, and then I'll get back into it. I've got my Coaches Award, but from college.
Right.
And it was the Black and Blue Award, the dude who dove on the floor and took charges award.
Right.
And my senior picture that I got senior day, an action shot, it's got short shorts as well. So I'm feeling you on both accounts.
All right.
The team this year, what more than anything else, I've been blessed with players, parents, and an administration that's been fantastic in the COVID environment. Always wanted to make sure we get in as many games as possible, whatever they needed to do to support the team. Returned 7 seniors from last year's team. We've had a really good year. We've had I think one of the more difficult schedules. We got to play Lake Braddock. We got to play West Springfield. We've got Centerville in our district. We've gotten to play Southlake. So I love Chris Jolly, but if you look at that, we've played 4 games against his top 9 or 10. So I think we've done really well. Where are we? 4-3 right now in the district, with a close loss to Westfield last night, 1 close loss to Centerville, one not quite so close loss, but a group that plays hard together. Logan Spafford, who was first team all district last year, is having another great year. He had 25 last night against Westfield. Pretty strong backcourt. My cat, who wants something in the background. Actually, my wife would be ecstatic that I said my cat. It's more her cat. But no, it's been a really good year. Colin Tuft, a UVA commit, started out the season incredibly hard. He'll be back if we play again this week. We still have 1 game to make up against Westfield if it gets made up, and then into the all-in region tournament. I think the all-in region tournament's been great going back when it's been proposed in the past. But since there's no district tournament this year, at least for us, the all-in region tournament I think is going to be an exciting environment, and it'll be really interesting to see what the brackets look like when it's not just the top 4 from 2 districts and L1 plays C4. You're working in 13 teams, so it'll be a different region tournament than any of us have seen in a while, at least.
Let me ask you about that, Coach. And first, I want to say I have seen you guys play a little bit this year, and have enjoyed watching you play. Your kids always play really, really hard, and you've got some talent as well. I mean, you're one of those teams that I definitely wouldn't want to play, in the tournament, because you're capable of beating any team on any given night. I think Colin Tufts, you mentioned, exceptional athlete. UVA all commit, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So you've made those postseason runs before, both at McLean and Madison, and postseason basketball is a little different animal sometimes than the regular season. What do you think are like the components that it takes to make a run in the postseason, maybe generally or specifically when it comes to your team this year? What types of things maybe do you have to do to have a chance to kind of get hot and make one of those runs?
What I've always focused on with our guys is when we get to that point is really defense first. I mean, you at this point now, particularly now that every single game, you don't even have to ask other teams to share film with you. I mean, it's all on YouTube or Facebook somewhere, since everyone's live streaming. But it is getting the guys to understand what is the other team's option A and option B, and we do everything we can, a lot of game planning to try to force them into option C. And I always tell them, so fellas, if we go to take away Chris Kazemka and he's good enough that we can't, well, then you tip your hat to him. And then it's on the offensive side. It's just playing a disciplined game. We can run, we can press, we do both opportunistically, but it then comes down to really making sure that we get good possessions. And that really starts to drive with a good backcourt, but I think it's tough to make a deep run without a pretty good backcourt. And I'm fortunate, I mean, I returned 2 guys in the backcourt that were both second team all district last year. So I think we've got a good backcourt. We've got with Colin Tuft and Logan Spafford and a couple other guys. RJ Waldron's probably my best overall defender. He's one of those glue guys. I think he averages 1.5 points a game, but he's on the floor all the time because he's my best team defender. So I think we've got that kind of combination that on the night, unless you run into I always joke back 10 years ago, the Georgetown teams, they'd hit the NCAA tournament and they'd have one of those 29% shooting nights from the floor. And that's as far as they would go. But I think a team that's focused defensively and really to take away the other team's first 2 choices. And then we focus really on just good possessions. And usually you need a pretty good backcourt. And when I've had those runs, it's been Johnny Korish or Arun Darab, who had a 5-game string that was phenomenal. And I'm hopeful this year I've got those 2 guards that should give us pretty good continuity and pretty good consistency in the backcourt.
Hey, Kevin, has COVID changed the way you've coached in the past? Obviously a very unique situation, but have you seen it alter maybe the way you do practice or you prepare for games, or maybe you haven't had time to prepare for games? So tell us a little bit about that impact on your coaching style this year.
It has, because you had those 2 weeks. And so you've got to figure out when you're going to push, how hard you're going to push. You had 2 weeks. So you had to basically, all right, how much do I think I can get in? And again, that's where I am fortunate with the 9 returners from last year, 7 seniors, as opposed to other schools that either only return 1 or 2 starters or heck, I mean, Chantilly, the coach there, had to put in a whole new program given 2 weeks. So you figure out what you can put in that compressed timeline. And then we opened with 3 games a week for 2 straight weeks. So you can really, you get challenged there of, if I'm playing Monday, Wednesday, Saturday, and you do it 2 weeks in a row, you can't have killer practices in between. And there also isn't the time to spend, okay, we're going to spend this day, half of this day on player development. You're rolling. And yeah, it absolutely changes. It absolutely changes the focus. And then game A is postponed. And then, so you're always dealing with the changes of the schedule. So you had to really roll with the punches a lot more, because you're just not, again, as we talked right before we get started, I'm usually not looking out more than about 72 hours.
Related question before we let you go, unless Coach Weir, unless you have any more questions. So we talked about this year being different. Coach Rowley, you mentioned earlier, access to video because there's so much live stream stuff going on. Like I would think you've got to have some discipline because you could probably go down a rabbit hole and just, keep watching game after game after game because there's so much access to it. How do you manage that? Like you said, you can stay up late into the night watching all kinds of games, but you probably drive yourself crazy and at some point get too much information on a team.
I pretty much pick 2 games.
Yeah.
And then try to find 2 more recent, and maybe have an assistant coach who has nothing better to do. We all seem to have something better to do, but
Right.
pick one other. But you try to pick 2 games that you think team plays a similar style to you. And all right, what we played Westfield last night. What are the 2 or 3 sets they really want to go to? Who's the ace shooter? How do they try to get them open? We try to push them into something else. So
Right.
it's not perfect, but I don't think I think we've that part's been pretty similar to years past. But yes, you could absolutely go down the rabbit hole, and I think you'd hit the law of diminishing returns awfully fast after a couple of games.
Coach Weirin, any final?
No, I want to let Coach Roller get some sleep, man, and get ready for.
See the next time we practice, whether it's probably not going to be tomorrow, so Tuesday, maybe Wednesday.
Yeah. No, thanks a lot, Kevin. We appreciate your time. Obviously, have a ton of respect for you. We'll talk about you all the time on the show, and I hope your family's well. I hope you have a nice snow day off. Get some rest.
We'll do. And when I say, I always like to tell people, we'll do Boston. For you, it actually was that for about 8 years.
That's true.
So, Kevin, Brian, you have a fantastic rest of your day, and shovel in the driveway whenever you get around to it.
Got it. Thanks, Coach. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Well, I didn't want to say this in front of him, and I don't know if he'll listen or not, but for people out there who don't know Kevin, I think he is one of the best minds in basketball. I think he really, knows a ton about the game and does a ton of preparation and really gets his teams not only to play hard, as you mentioned, because we saw his run a couple of years ago, in the state tournament, but I think he has a great mind for the game. And just a quick story, when he and I coached together, he was all the X's and O's I could handle, and he was so good at it. I ended up giving majority of that to him, and I would say things like, "Hey, Kevin, we need this. We need an offense for this type of team that we're going to have," and he would come up with pages and pages. I mean, beyond what I could possibly imagine getting from anybody. And he just has such a love for the game and such a high level of competency and intelligence when it comes to breaking it down and teaching it. So, he was a huge part of any success I had at Marshall for those 8 years, and probably didn't get enough credit, but I think he does get that credit now. Hey, that was my wife.
Yeah.
Happens when you don't block your back screen, your background. But Kevin was a huge part of that, and I think everyone knows now, if they didn't know already, the great job he did at McLean and he does at Madison, and he's just a great mind, and I have a ton of respect for him. So I appreciate him coming on this morning.
Cool.
So,
Okay.
Into the show, Brian. Into the show. Let's. He mentioned, season wrapping up. I think we're pretty much done in most districts. With the snow coming, I don't know how much you're going to be able to play. And
Right.
talked before the show that Westfield's only played 4 games in this district. How are they going to make that stuff? Those games up. I don't know what they're going to do with the snow coming now in the next couple of days, but you're going to have to wrap things up. So maybe we can talk about who we think the district winners are. I think it's established for sure in some places, and other places maybe we could speculate. Thank you.
Let's do it. But you're right. It's a weird year in every respect. I mean, you throw snow into the mix. I wouldn't want to be the one. I wouldn't want to be the AD that has to make those decisions as far as who do you play and make up games and things like that. So anyway, all right. Liberty District, Kevin, we've talked.
I think that's,
Yeah.
Coach Mike Desmond there has been trying to hold us off on proclaiming them champs for the whole season. And we knew it was going to happen from the start. We knew they had the talent. and the ability, and they ran through the district, and they are now district champs for the regular season, and can't hide anymore. Coach Desmond, you were the team to beat for sure. Unblemished record, and they won the district going away. So Lakes winning the Liberty. Also, I think along the same lines as Centerville winning the Concord regular season, I think Madison was their closest chance for a loss, and they really blew out Madison the second time they played. Moving on into Prince William. Oh, I'm sorry, not Prince William. We'll stay in Fairfax with Patriot District. A big game last night, Brian. South County and Lake Braddock.
Yeah, Andre Spate, who's a Mount St. Mary's commit, with the game winner to defeat Lake Braddock. So I think that puts SoCo in the driver's seat. That's been very interesting this year, because I thought, if you go back and look at some of the early hoopcasts, I was talking Lake Braddock and SoCo as state championship contenders, and they are. But I think COVID's maybe brought them down a little bit, like it has to a lot of teams. But like Woodson beat SoCo, and West Springfield's competed well with those teams. So I think there's not as much separation between the two of them and the rest of that district as I thought there would be. But I still suspect, the cream will rise to the top. Those two have an opportunity to, make all kinds of noise in the postseason.
So we're predicting that South County did win the Patriot, though, with that win last night.
Correct. And
it's not verified, but that's pretty much what we think right now.
And also keep in mind, I don't think it's any secret now, Braddock just came off a pause.
Right. So they got some games to make up.
Yeah.
So we'll see. That might change.
Right. They are still, Kevin, let me say, that's the one league that I know for sure is still planning on having a district tournament.
We talked to Kevin Roller. They're an all-in region with Liberty and Concord. And then I think you add in Marshall from the national. And I think there's one more team they added. Do you remember? Or is that
Wakefield?
Because there's 13 teams. I'm not sure who that 13th team is.
Marshall and Wakefield, I think.
Marshall and Wakefield, which those are two decent teams for sure.
Yeah. So Kevin, in the Patriot, like that's I think the easy thing to do this year is just do an all-in regional tournament. So if you're doing a district tournament, like you're going to have to, the ADs are going to have to make some decisions about how they do seeding, because there will be teams that have not played as many games as other teams. So do you just count those as losses? That's what some college leagues are doing that. Like if you don't play X number of games, then we just count those as losses. So I don't know how they're going to do it, but again, those are kind of the things.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree 100% with the all-in. There might be some things that we're not seeing or don't know about, but that's a tough call for sure.
Yeah.
Moving on into the Gunston district, we think that Hayfield is going to be the champs there. I mean, I think that's where we are right now. That I guess that could change if we're missing some rescheduled games. Moving on to Prince William in the Cedar Run district, we think that Champ might win that district. Patriot did lose the other night to Battlefield, which gives them 2 losses, and Champ only has that 1 loss to Patriot.
Yeah, they split during the regular season. And then, I was surprised that was a nice upset for Battlefield beating Patriot the other night.
Yeah.
So it appears to me that gives Champ the edge.
And then also in Prince William, the Cardinal District, Potomac, we talked about all year, haven't lost yet.
No.
Woodbridge on their heels, but I think that's Potomac District champ.
They play this Thursday, I believe, Potomac and Woodbridge. I'm going to try to get out and see that game. Who knows if things will get shuffled around because of the snow, but that'll be a good one. Now, they beat them. I mean, Potomac beat them by like 20 the first time they played, but Woodbridge is right behind them.
Okay. In Loudon, we have Stonebridge winning the Potomac District. I still think there's a chance a couple other teams could win that. They did finish with the best record, but played some close games against teams late in the year. The Dulles District was won by Loudoun County, who's won 12 in a row. I think they were 0-2 their first 2 games. And they've won 12 in a row. But again,
are they under the radar, Kevin?
What's that?
Are they under the radar?
I don't think so anymore. I think teams forgot about them.
Yeah.
But I think they're definitely the favorite right now. But there's other teams there, Dominion, Broad Run, who can definitely pull that championship off. And then last but not least, I think the district that we're unclear about is the national district right now. Wakefield and Edison, we're not quite sure who's going to win that. Edison has one loss. They lost to Marshall the other day. But I think Wakefield only has one loss as well. So I'm not quite sure. That's kind of remains to be seen.
That's an interesting district because some of the teams there's a lot of parity in that district. There's not a lot of separation. I think there might be a team or two towards the bottom that would be a significant upset, but either the Marshalls and the Falls Churches of the world are, as evidenced by Marshall's win over Edison, those teams are capable of beating Edison and Wakefield. So that's been an interesting league to watch this year.
Well, let's use that, Brian, to segue into some dark horses and teams that didn't win the regular season, but are very capable still of winning that championship. I'll throw the first one out there, and that's Yorktown. I think Yorktown's a team that, given the right night and the fact that they play the system they play, could get hot and beat somebody.
Right. Let me. I'm gonna respond to that because Langley just beat them. Langley swept them this year.
Buzzer, right? They beat them at the buzzer.
Yeah. Yes. And it was in the 50s too, which is hard to do against Yorktown. And so I would kind of dovetail that and say Langley's also a dark horse.
You know what? We talked about them as being one of those teams, and then they played the top teams in their district and got beat and kind of to me faded toward the back. And then you're saying that we should still consider them.
I think so. I think the second half of the season they've shown that they can, again, all it takes in postseason basketball is on one night to be able to get it done. And I think they've shown that they can. So I would add them to the mix in that league.
How about you mentioned Falls Church? I think Falls Church is a good one. They beat Marshall basically at the buzzer the other day, and they hit a shot with 2 seconds left.
Right.
I think they're sitting there third and fourth in that national district. I think they're a team that can definitely surprise you. We got some good guard play.
Yep.
So I put them in the mix as well. I mentioned Dominion. Dominion was a senior-heavy team coming in the season and shot out of the gate in that Dulles district and were on top. And Loudoun County kind of playing better in the second part of the season, but I still think Dominion has not only the size because they're a huge team, but a lot of senior talent as well.
Yeah. I'll jump down into Prince William and mention Woodbridge, who I mentioned earlier. Potomac, I don't think there's any question is the class of that league and of the county this year, but Woodbridge is a pretty good team. It would take a good effort for them to get over the hump and beat Potomac, but they've got a little bit of everything. They got shooter, they got a good point guard, they got some size, so they could do it on any night. So I'd put them. I don't know if they're a dark horse, but they can win some games and make a run in the postseason for sure.
I'll come back with a bunch of teams in the Potomac district, 5A district here in Loudoun. I know Stonebridge won, but it could be a Riverside. They've gotten hot in the postseason in the past. They could kind of, their third place spot to win it. Rockridge, who was the team beat in Loudoun for much of the year, definitely could beat them as well. So I don't know if you call them dark horses, but definitely contenders.
Well, I think those two teams have two things. I'll mention, like Rockridge has Spurlock, right? So they've got a player who can he's good enough to carry a team. And then Riverside, I think we talk over the years a lot about the value of tradition. And even though you're a young school, Riverside's made some postseason runs already. And so. Yeah,
last 2 years they've been in the state tournament. And I think they have a good senior class led by Michael Ziller, who's been playing well and shooting well. But they have 10 kids who can play, and they all do. So I think that's a definite positive for them.
I'll say in the Patriot District back in Fairfax, both West Springfield and Woodson have.
Yeah, Woodson really surprised me. Coach Craig, to me, coming out of nowhere and getting that win over South County, but also, just staying consistent and beating all the other teams.
Yeah, they're kind of one of those, we've seen it before with their team. They're kind of a gritty, hard-nosed team. And if they get some breaks, their effort's going to be outstanding every night. And West Springfield's kind of done the same. They're neither one of those teams is as talented as Lake Braddock and South County. I don't think anybody would argue that. But Woodson beat South County the first time they played. And West Springfield's played those teams competitively as well. So
maybe next week, since we won't have a ton of games to talk about, we can talk about not only the preview of the region tournaments, but maybe highlight some superlatives and teams that surprised us.
Right.
Maybe talk about some of the best of each category, both as teams and as players. One category I want to throw out this week, just because it was thinking about it, was top playmakers in our coverage area. I want to throw a couple out there.
Okay.
I'll start with
made my own list too.
What's that?
I made my list too.
Oh, you did? Okay. Hey,
of additional names after I saw your list.
Addendum. Okay. Addendum. Some playmakers that I've seen this year. Trey Nelson, we've obviously talked about him from Patriot, having a phenomenal year for Sherman Rivers. But we haven't mentioned Sleepy Latour, a great senior guard for South.
I saw him play the other night in their senior night against Yorktown, and he hit like 4 threes. He was very excited. I mean, you love to see something like that on a senior night for a kid, but he can shoot the ball. He's a good player.
We haven't talked too much about him. I mean, we've talked about South Lakes a lot, but because of their depth and because they have a lot of talent, but I think he needs to be someone of note. The Jaspers, we've mentioned them several times, but obviously great playmakers, speed, quickness, decision-making.
Right.
There's Keith Honorace, who we haven't really spoke about. I
think it's Kyle, right?
Yeah, I mean, we talk about how deep they are and how good they are, but you never get into individual players, and there's probably other players on Potomac we've mentioned, but I think he's one that we can look out for. And Loudon, there's a player named Michael Tehan who plays for Briar Woods. I think he's a tough player and has played consistent for the Briar Woods team.
Right.
Dylan Huntermark for Stonebridge, a good guard. Saw him play in person the other night. And then Arnav Thornhill, who's a junior guard, tough kid, also plays football for Broad Run. Those are kids that I really like their game and having a real good season. The team's allowed. And how about other places? Oh, there's my daughter. Hey. Daughter walked by.
Little cameo.
Yeah, cameo.
Okay, you ready for the addendum?
Yes, the addendum.
Quincy Via from Lake Braddock.
Yes.
I love the way he plays, and they've got a lot of weapons, but he kind of is a great facilitator for them. Braylon Wheeler for Hayfield certainly had a good season. Here's a name we talked about last year when he was at a different school. Kenyani Lee at South County was at
Forest Park last year.
Saw him
play at the Falls Church Christmas tournament. And was
yes. We talked about Woodson a few minutes ago. Andre Pacheco from Woodson, again, kind of gritty, hard-nosed, maybe a little bit more of a traditional point guard. Amir Arakat for Langley has had a very strong second half of the season. Makai Mims from Woodbridge, he's about a 6'3" point guard who kind of makes.
Shenandoah, Brian, is that?
Yes, he's a Shenandoah commit. I think that's a steal for Shenandoah. He's quite a player. We've talked about these two kids a lot, and maybe they're more like combo guards and playmakers, but Chris Kazemka from Centerville and John Awoke from Annandale, and those guys, it's kind of the way the game is these days. You don't really have the old school point guard, the old school Kevin Weirin point guard who might have, 5 points and 8 assists and 3 steals and be a floor general. A lot of these guys nowadays see themselves as combo guards, and they can score.
They score, that's for sure.
Yeah. So there you go. There's my addendum.
I think next week we can come up with some categories, not only for teams and for individuals. And I think it's going to be an interesting week, Brian, as we wrap up the show. There's a big question mark as to who's going to keep playing. And if you're not playing, you've got a lot of practice time. And you might know already who you're playing. I know our teams in our district know already. So you've got plenty of time, maybe to give them a day or two off.
Yeah,
You're going to be forced to give them a day off, sure, on Monday, maybe Tuesday, but you give them
Right.
more time off. Do you get them, in the room or maybe in Zoom and watching film now? Maybe
Yeah.
that's something we didn't used to do. I mean, it's a
Right.
good idea,
I like it. I like it.
So,
Yeah, I think you and I are on the same page. I mean, we used to have, maybe you come in for an hour and 15 minutes, and you walk through a couple things, get some shots up, get your quick work done and get out of there, usually this time of year. But yeah, it's a very, very unusual year. But even in a normal year, you certainly approach postseason preparation practice time differently than you would in December.
yeah. So next week will be an interesting show. We can probably count on one hand how many we have left. We're kind of wrapping things up. I think this is number 7.
Yeah.
I don't see us getting far past 10 or 11.
Right.
So,
Right.
I think we're wrapped it up. Right?
I think it's great. We had some cameos today. We had your wife and your daughter. I saw your dog at one point. Your dog walked down the stairs. I think your dog was following your wife right down the stairs.
Probably.
And then we saw Coach Roller's cat.
Yeah, Coach Roller's cat. Yep.
Yeah.
Little cameo. Maybe I should learn to reposition my camera. Maybe that's the lesson that I'll probably get from my family when I get done. But another good week. Hope you have a good week. Shovel snow. Do whatever you got to do. I'm going to get some rest. And we'll talk next time on the Nova Hoopcast.
See you next time.